you were hot stuff. Overusage of the word fabulous. A misguided conviction that refusing to vote is making a political statement. A tendency to mug the more premeditative with a sudden impulse to go camping this very afternoon and to make them feel like spoil sports when they didn't want to go. No. It was the sum total that rankled, the whole package, the essence from which all of these evidences sprang. Jillian could remain perfectly still with her mouth zipped, and Estelle Pettiford, a fellow crafts counselor at the Maryland summer camp where Jillian worked for a couple of seasons, whose idea of compelling recreation for 15-year-olds was making Christmas trees out of phone books in July, would still have hated her, and the girl would have kept hating her even if this object of odium didn't move a muscle or utter a syllable through to the end of time. That was what slew Jillian about being disliked. There was no remedy, no chance of tempering an antipathy into, say, forbearance, or healthy apathy. It was simply your being in the world that drove these people insane, and even if you killed yourself, your suicide would annoy them too. More attention-seeking. Glib standard advice would be not to care. Right. Except that shrugging off the fact that someone despised you was impossible. The expectation was inhuman, so that, on top of having someone hate you, you cared that someone hated you, and apparently you shouldn't. Caring made you even more hateable. Your inability to dismiss another's animus was one more thing that was wrong with you. Because that was the thing. These sneering, disgusted perceptions always seemed to have more clout than the affections of all the other people who thought you were delightful. Your friends had been duped. The naysayers had your number. There was Linda Warburton, her co-worker during a stint leading tours at the Stonewall Jackson house, who grew insensibly enraged every time Jillian brewed strong coffee in the staff kitchen. Jillian made strong everything, as the girl preferred her Java weak. After Jillian began going to the extra trouble of boiling a kettle so that Linda could dilute her own mug to her heart's content, the accommodation to everyone's tastes seemed only to drive the lumpy, prematurely middle-aged 25-year-old to more ferocious abhorrence. Linda actually submitted a formal complaint to the Virginia Tourist Board that Jillian Frisk wore the bonnet of her costume at an historically inaccurate, cocky slant. There was Tatum O'Hagan, the clingy, misbegotten roommate of 1998, who seemed to want to become bosom buddies when Jillian first moved in. In fact, the brownie-baking sharing of confidences became a bit much. But who, once Jillian inserted a merciful crack of daylight between the two, came to find her presence so unendurable that she posted a roster of which evenings one or the other could occupy the living room, and which hours, different hours, they could cook. There was the officious Olivia Auerbach only 2 years ago, another unpaid organizer of the annual Maury River Fiddlers Convention, who accused her of distracting the musicians from their practice and overstepping the necessarily humble role of a volunteer. And how? Jillian had a sizzling affair with a participant from Tennessee who knew how to fiddle with more than his bow. Tall and slender, with a thick thatch of kinked henna hair that tumbled to her elbows, Jillian had trouble being inconspicuous, and that wasn't her fault. She supposed she was pretty, though that adjective seemed to have a statute of limitations attached. At 43, she'd probably been downgraded to attractive. In preparation, since postmenopausal flattery went unisex, for handsome. Gosh, she could hardly wait for well-preserved. So she might plausibly dismiss this bafflingly consistent incidence of female animosity.